One mistake students should avoid when booking accommodation.
Don't just be drawn on price or offer. Yes, I think there's a lot of value in doing an undergrad and a lot of value in doing a postgrad. It's not for everyone. When I first started working at Select, I was on the sales floor at 17, making tea and running around for the sales guys.
We have people like me who are so smart. We don't book, we go there, we're like, we'll see.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see, and then we solve.
Accommodation while you're studying is, for some people, just a bed. They just need to find a place to sleep while they're studying. And we don't believe that that's the case at Vita Student. See?
No plans of exploring India as a market, as a destination market?
I think you could get the best quality degree from Oxford University and still end up unemployed.
Yeah. This industry not only inflation or a recession proof, it's also pandemic proof. And now I call it's a World War III proof.
Yeah.
Why UK universities are still milking international students? Same education, same infrastructure, same faculty. You are giving to a domestic student for under 10,000.
Yeah.
And you're charging 3 times or 4 times an international student. How fair is that? Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good early morning, because when I was seeing this podcast, I have realized that lots of my audience and each of you, most of you are watching it at 2 a.m., 5 a.m., 7 p.m., so all across the world, people are watching it, So thank you for being part of University Living journey, and especially Living Pod by Saurabh, because I never thought 8 months back that I will be recording 40 odd podcasts, and now, everyone is asking that, are you working or you become a content creator? And trust me, it's very infectious, it's addicted. But as an entrepreneur, as a founder, there are lots of things which we don't do on camera. I tell every entrepreneur, every leader, everyone to create their brand, to create their distribution, because end of the day, it's all about your distribution. It's all about your brand. It's all about your original thoughts. So on that note, I have a leader. I have a friend. Yes, I can call him a friend who not only I'm learning from, but also we are growing together. Of course, they have grown like 100x what we are. But I relate so much with my guest, with this brand. And the fact is, we are so much similar. And I only want to say, let me try to be real. Let me try to get best out of this guest. And we have Max. He's not only a friend, but also an industry leader and one of the youngest COO, if I'm not wrong, and also one of the fastest growing brand. Max, how are you doing?
Great, mate. Thank you so much. Such a kind introduction. You make me feel
I have not
very...
introduced you. You didn't introduce yourself. I just said what I know.
Yeah.
But you can do your introduction. You can add all the fancy things because I know you have lots of fancy things to say, and all those things are real. So please go ahead.
No, it's exactly how I feel about you guys. I think we share a kinship, don't we, in terms of how we organise our approach to business and life, and and I think the team culture that I see here at University Living is something that I've grown up around and understand. So it's very kind of you, mate. Really appreciate it. But yeah, really, really good to be here. Great to join the pod. Seeing obviously many episodes, it's gaining a lot of traction. Lots of people are listening. So fantastic to be here myself.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being kind. You've been kind. I've been real. Right? Vita or Select Property, what do you want to start with? There are so many things we can discuss. I guess to my audience, I'm doing it to learn from him. I'm doing it to relive all those good, very good, not so good days we have together, because this industry has been very, very interesting. But so if we have gone out and out, we do like 4 or 5 years of talking. So please don't get bored. There will be shots, there will be clips. But idea is to discuss. Max, tell me more about yourself. Or probably I would say, tell me what took you to India.
So I'm, as you mentioned before, I'm COO for Vita Group. So my role predominantly looks after our customers. So finding the customers, bringing them to our properties, and then looking after them when they're in our properties. Vita Group has multiple brands. Probably the most famous is Vita Student, and that's our kind of largest and most successful example of building a very customer-centric property. Why I'm in India, it's one of the markets that we are most excited about. One thing that Vita's always done, and something that I learned very early from my days back at Select Property, which is the other brand that you mentioned, was that if you're going to grow a global business, you've got to really try and shrink geography. And really, you can't just do it from afar. You can't just, be a British business person saying that you're doing business in China or Dubai or India, limply having a go with Teams calls, doing some research online. You have to go. You have to meet people. You have to have conversations. You have to listen, really understand the market that you're trying to play to adapt your product and adapt your strategy. So I've been coming out to India to see you guys now for several years, 5 or 6 years. But before that, I learned from Mark, the founder of our business, and other mentors that I've had within Select Property and Vita, that you need to get on the plane, you need to go to places and meet people. And if you've got team members in particular, it's important that you see them as well. So we've spent a lot of time building offices in Dubai, across China, now in India. We have offices in Spain. So travel's important. It's difficult to do and it's hard to do with family, as you mentioned before. And I've had to moderate that. But that's why I'm here, to kind of learn more, listen, understand where the market is, understand where you guys are, and from those learnings, hopefully make our product and our strategy better.
You mentioned travel, right? You like travel, or?
I wouldn't say I like it. I've grown to be patient with it. I think I used to hate it. I used to be really nervous about traveling.
Even when you travel jet class?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's so. I'm a big fan of Emirates. Always fly Emirates. I have done for many years. Big advocate of Emirates as the Skywards.
So do you have a personal jet operated by Emirates?
No,
not yet.
No.
Do you aspire to?
No, I think it's not the most efficient. It
doesn't sound
travel.
convincing.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think Emirates is very good, but I actually, over many years of many economy flights, managed to earn gold status of Emirates, which was fantastic. And I've recently just lost it because I didn't keep up my travel. That's what I was saying before about moderating travel. Had a baby a year and a half ago, reduced the travel quite a lot to stay at home, and had to sacrifice my gold membership.
How young are you?
I'm 34.
34?
Yeah.
And you're young, you have a second baby or a?
Just the first, Jasper.
First.
Yeah,
So,
he's 1.5.
So you're a young, newly baked parent,
yeah.
right? How do you manage travels? Because I know you've been traveling to Dubai, China, you've been spending in Spain, India's your new baby, our common friend, or Nikki, which we have a very fond memories, and she's just around, right? She have done so much for India and GCC. What are your learnings for India? And before that, you've been a young parent. Does life change after you becoming a young parent and managing a brand like Vita?
It definitely,
which is global. Yeah,
100% changes. I think before we had the baby, I probably arrogant and naive to think that my life wouldn't change at all from a work perspective. And I just, every time people told me it was going to change, I said, no, not me, it'll be fine, I'll find a way. And you have to modify, you have to adjust. It's like,
go out.
Yeah, well, I was thinking that it's more that you've got responsibility to, in my case, my wife Harriet and Jasper baby, and I really want to see them, want to support them. But as your kind of situation changes through your career, you've got to modify your game. An example of that for me, which I always appreciate, is Cristiano Ronaldo. He used to be one type of player, very talented. He invested a lot of time to change his physicality and his style of play to be, very physical, very fast. As he got older, he couldn't maintain that same game. So he had to change how he played to still be at a high standard. I think as things happen in your life and you get more responsibilities or things change, you've got to change how you play the game. Otherwise, it's not going to be sustainable. You're not 21 forever. You've not got the same stamina that you had at the early outset of the career. You've got to modify things slightly. And your responsibilities within work change as well. So there was a time where you just did you. And if you just did you and you were successful, great. But now you're responsible for different people. You've got to help support those people in their goals as well. So you've got to change. You've got to have a modification.
So you're saying you need to evolve.
100%.
Right? But it's not easy, right? See, change is the only constant we all know. But still we don't want to change, because we all get comfort. We all get used to stay in a certain way. I mean, coming back to travel. So how I say it, I love travel, I hate travel. when I'm packaging and getting to a plane, I just dread that feeling.
Yeah.
Getting
It's
at
a waste
12.
of time, isn't
yeah.
it? It's like,
But once I landed, I'm like, great. As you mentioned, great. I took a plane and I'm here.
yeah, and you're on it then, you focus.
And once you are there, you're like so much of, and you're a CEO. That means you are managing lots of operations, right? So when you're traveling, and you're responsible for operations. Do you feel anxious? Do you feel that I need to back to an office to manage things? And when you're on the go, it's tough.
Yeah. No, I personally, no, but I think that's because I'm very lucky with the team that we have. So when I'm going away, we plan all of the routines. So I'm not going to be. It's very important that if you're going to make a trip and go and see people, you're present. I need to be right here, right now with you, and discussing Vita Student, university living, how we work together. What I can't be thinking about is how Glasgow is running, or how many bookings Warwick's done today, or the meeting that the sales and marketing team had this morning and that I wasn't present for it, because that will distract me from my objectives.
But then naturally it happens, no? At least, I mean...
Well, no, for me, honestly, like I feel like I've got total confidence in the team that are doing that. So,
but the management vibe, the founder vibe, the CEO vibe, or probably whether it's a vibe or whether it's experience or whether it's that willingly or unwillingly, you need to be around,
Yeah, I think...
because the buck stop at you.
It does, but I think there's a few things, key ingredients. So the team that we have, I think they feel the weight of the responsibility as much as I do. So many of them will feel more passionately owning their area than I will ever need to ask them to feel. They're all actually better than I am at their individual areas. So,
See, all founders say this. I also say this publicly, and even privately, I say they're better version of mine, right? But still, at least probably, we are not as evolved and as experienced and a bigger team like yours. 22 years?
Yeah. Select opened just over 20 years ago. Yeah.
What a journey! And Vita
is just over 10 now.
Wow, what a journey! And I have eye on Vita. I have eye on Select because I believe that's a journey we would like to take. Probably open a REIT. Become a global distribution system, right? Because the overall journey of 20 years, right? But where I'm coming in, I say I'm one of the blessed co-founder with Mayank and such a great team, right? You met the team, right?
Yeah.
But
Brilliant
still,
team.
I believe personally, and this is what probably I'm checking with you. Probably I need to change or learn. But even at time you can't do as a founder, right? But then probably that extra responsibility or probably the buck stop at you, probably, when you are passionate and, probably you feel that like you're Superman, right? You don't go through that situations.
Right now, no. I'm trying to think back to if I felt that historically. And I think at points in our journey, I would have had pangs of wanting to be in control of certain things. No, honestly, right now, I feel like the team that cater for each area that they're responsible for are very, very good at what they do. I'm also lucky that they work well together. So sometimes it's more productive when I'm not in the conversation. I think some of the things that those guys can come up with without me is going to look at it in a totally different way to the way I would have thought about it. And I like finding out about how productive some of those sessions and some of those weeks were when I'm not around, because some really good ideas and opportunities flourish in that environment. So I see it sometimes as an opportunity for those guys to deliver the goods and do well. And I think, look, at the end of the day, all of us, everyone in our profession, if you're given a task, you would do the task in a certain way. Yeah. If you ask someone else to do a task, they'd do it in a certain way. There's a million different paths to get to the same outcome, and it's very difficult to know which is optimized. I think there's a million ways to skin a cat is what they say. But I think if you let people have a go, they either do it better than you do or they do it worse. But if they do it worse, it gives an opportunity for feedback and learning, and then there's a growth and a learn there anyway. So it's sort of win-win. So no, I think when I'm away, I'm here, I'm focused, I'm on this. I always think that it's a real investment to travel and go away somewhere and be focused somewhere. So if I was only half present to this, I feel as though I'd be flushing my investment down the toilet if I wasn't, I need to be present.
Did you say you're 34?
Yeah.
You're sounding 50 plus. It's probably the experience coming in.
No, I think it's just quite boring. Old head on young shoulders.
No, absolutely.
I think
You're definitely, ready to be a father.
yeah.
Good news for your partner.
Hopefully.
But I've always seen
trying
you.
my hardest.
I've been meeting you for 5-6 years now,
Yeah.
right? I've always seen you as a very evolved and patient human being.
Oh, thank you.
Is it something you acquired, or you've been like this all the way?
I don't know. I think that's very kind of you. I think I've had a lot. I've been very lucky in that I've had a lot of very good teachers. So I started work quite young. I was lucky enough to do work experience for Mark, who's my boss and the founder of the business, both Select and Vita. Very inspirational guy. I'll mention him in a second, but he gave me the opportunity to work at quite a young age. And
18?
Yeah, I think I did work experience for him when I was first 16 and 17, and started working for him full time when I was 18. And he gave me loads of opportunity. So both opportunity to fail. So like in a safe space, he allowed me to kind of mess a few things up and taught me, but also gave me opportunity to flourish and get confidence in doing things. But he also exposed me to lots of people. So when you're getting your 10,000 hours of meetings in sales floor, yeah, exactly. You get some flight time, you get hours under your belt, and I think I've just had a lot of exposure to a lot of people that I respect. You mentioned Nikki. Nikki's fantastic. When I first started working at Select, and I was on the sales floor at 17, making tea and running around for the sales guys. She was like one of the top saleswomen on the sales floor. I remember looking at her thinking, wow, she's really impressive. But yeah, been exposed to loads of great mentors, teachers, in varied roles as well, be that operations, marketing, sales, and learned a lot from those people. So you try and be a sponge, right? You try and expose yourself to people and take what you think is positive attributes.
I got my heading of this podcast, making teas to CO.
Yeah.
Right? And making teas in India is like, the Mr. Modi story.
Yeah.
So, chai wala and making tea. Tea is a very
Sacred.
popular headings, right? You studied at 16, right?
Yeah.
Did you go to college?
No.
And you are helping international students accommodate, right?
So both Mark, who founded the business, and myself, who runs it now, neither of us went to university.
So then, how do you understand global education? And you have not, in my case, I got fortunate and unfortunate because I went to Nottingham and didn't get my housing. I stayed in a hotel for 1.5 months. So I lived this problem. So I am qualified to help students to accommodate because I didn't go through, I didn't get my accommodation. But here you and your boss, Mark, and your CEO, who have not gone to university, from where this idea came in, first. Second, in how you are keeping abreast, because whatever said and done, whatever reading you're doing, whatever people you're meeting, but once you experience that life, there's definitely an edge. Second, given a chance, a young Max will go back and complete his undergrad and then masters and then become a CEO, or this journey which happened to you?
Both great questions. So first question, how are we qualified to do what we do? So it's precisely because Mark and I didn't go to university, and more Mark than me. He invented the product, and he was the inspirational mind behind it. He's like our, if we were Apple, he was the Steve Jobs. He pushed and innovated. And it was because he hadn't experienced university accommodation. He wasn't indoctrinated to just expect
there was no baggage.
Yeah. I think lots of people expect student accommodation to be poor quality. In the UK, I think historically, students were taken advantage of. They were given the worst quality accommodation for the highest possible rents, with low service standards, low duty of care. And to someone who's not been through that, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. You look at it and think, that's not right.
And that's where the opportunity strikes him.
And then that's where he noticed that there was an opportunity, because no one had developed a product that was actually caring for the consumer. And very little brand happens in property. Property is very slow, very traditional. There's a lot of money in property, so people aren't forced to innovate. But one of the property verticals where brand is very apparent is in hotels. And as a consumer of hotels and everyone who's stayed in a hotel, different branded propositions deliver different levels of service. There's a difference between 3-star, a 4-star and a 5-star, and there's a different cost. And it's not just all rooms being equal. And Mark saw this absence of brand in Student, and having not been through it himself, he was like, he didn't get it and was like, this is ridiculous. If you look at them as a human, this customer, they desire and deserve more. And so he created the foundations and the framework for what Vita Student is today, which is a very experience-led student accommodation. And we were the first to do quality real estate and experiential services. And many have started to do more of that since. But I'm really proud of his foresight to identify what consumers really need, and his ability to then deliver on that proposition. So I absolutely think it's his absence of having had that experience that makes him qualified. Equally for me on a daily basis today, I wasn't a student. I didn't go through the process of what students have to go through. And because I didn't have that experience, I'm not sort of limited by that experience, if that makes sense. So I just look at it as someone going to university is looking to make the very best of themselves. How do we help them do that? I don't put up with, just because other accommodation experiences, or maybe the accommodation experience I had was that bad, so they can all have that bad experience as well. We strive to do something very, very different. On your question about if I could go back and would I go down the educational route? No. I think there's a lot of value in doing an undergrad and a lot of value in doing a postgrad, but it's not for everyone. And I think that students shouldn't just go to university just because, they shouldn't passively just go through it. I think that that's not doing themselves justice. I think students really need to think about what interests them, what subject matter they believe they are switched on by, and something that they love and that can be passionate about, or something that they can see and materialize into a potential career, and they should pursue that passion. They shouldn't just do it because, and for me, going back to 20 years ago, I don't think I would still be able to pick a subject matter that, if I wanted to be a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer or something where you have to have that accreditation, then but I never had that motivations, and I don't have that motivation now, so I don't think it would have been for me.
How did you come to the industry? Is it because of Mark?
Yeah, all because of him.
There's a nepotism which made me CEO. I'm sorry, I'm putting on spot.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. So Mark's my cousin.
Yeah.
He had a very, very successful business, or still does, with Select Property. He was hiring hundreds of people, and they were in growth mode. And when I was coming to the end of my high school years, I was coming to the discussion point and the decision that I didn't really want to go to university. For me, I wanted to get out into the workplace. I wanted to start working.
There must be some thought or some experience or someone in your environment. Is it because of Mark only?
So I've had a lot of family members who have been really successful in business. So started their own businesses, or been fairly senior in businesses, and I've just had that itch to be attending business meetings, making money, working on projects, gaining experience, as opposed to more learning. If it was that I had a particular interest in something specific, photography or art or, as I said, law, then I would have probably had that interest and followed that. But I didn't have any interest, and I knew that I'd just be
You have seen Mark and lots of your family members not going to university and still making money.
And some went to university, and some even, my dad did some lecturing at university, and so I've got a lot of examples of positive experiences going to university as well. But I just knew it wasn't for me.
But how did you convince your dad, especially when he had been a lecturer?
They were fine with it. I think it was actually because of my mum that I started working for Mark. She did the typical mother thing, which was like, right, if you're not going to go to university, you're not going to sit at home and lie in bed and lozzock about, so you're getting into work. So she called up her nephew, my cousin Mark, and was like, have you got any jobs for Max? And she basically did it all. So I just got thrown into the Select Property environment, and then was just try to absorb what I could. And we've been on a real journey, as you mentioned before, which has brought us to Student.
It's been 18 years.
Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah, there or thereabouts, yeah.
So when did you become CEO?
I became COO about 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago.
You've gone through 12, 14 years of your journey.
Yeah.
When you have a cousin, who've been doing so great, and then you have people in Nikki and so many other who've been like amazingly well, right? I mean, for outsider, it seems that, oh, you are a cousin, and I also mentioned nepotism, but I know how much you have worked hard. But especially when you know that even you're working hard, there are people who will just laugh it off that, oh, because he's a cousin, because that's why he becomes CEO. How did you deal with it?
Yeah, it was that. I definitely felt that was a difficult thing to deal with, particularly at the start of my career, and something that I probably still have a level of imposter syndrome about now, and you have a bit of a chip on your shoulder. But what happened was, the 2 years that I did work experience from art when I was 16 and 17 in the summers, the business was very, very successful. It was flying, and there was no question that there'd be room for me. He was like, yeah, you can start on the sales floor, you can start on the marketing team, you can do whatever you want, but you've definitely got a job. Because I'd worked hard in the summers and shown that I was interested. He was like, yeah, you can have a job when you come back. So then came the summer of 2008 when 2009, where I was about to go and start at work. And I turned up the first day, ready to go, like brand new suit. There's a funny old picture of me next to my car at the time, all suited, ready to go into work.
You talk about cars, don't worry.
Yeah. And I turned up, and previous summer, there was a few hundred people at the office. This summer, there was 15 people. The economic crisis had happened, and at the time, it was a sales business that sold off-plan property all around the world. So when the recession happened, property sales just stopped. So when I came back, Mark was like, "Look, mate, the business has changed quite significantly. I know I said you could have a job here, but I can't fulfill that promise anymore. We've had redundancies, we've downscaled. Happy to give you some work experience." And I was like, I'd love some work experience. I got into Manchester Business School, so I just deferred my place at Manchester Business School, and 6 months for you for free, or do a few months, a few weeks. And he was like, yeah, and that's fine. And then those few weeks have now turned into 15, 16, 17 years. Yeah. So at the start, I felt it was tricky coming into the business because a load of people had been made redundant. But I was coming in not earning a salary, and I was just coming in to help and support. So I didn't feel as though I was doing anyone else out of a job, because I wasn't really there on a proper deal. But then I became more useful, or more kind of integrated in the business, and I had to prove over a period of time. And I think the most difficult period of time was I started in the marketing capacity. So I really enjoy sales, really enjoy marketing and those sides of things. But I actually started in the marketing capacity. Now, any marketing person knows that the relationship with the sales team is always a fraught relationship. Marketing people basically think that sales are lazy. Sales people think that marketing are too slow and too complex in what they're thinking. And back then, it was me as a marketing person, 18, 19, 20, trying to feed a sales team that were all far more senior than me, far more successful, like Nikki and those guys, with inquiries. And those guys used to beat me up. They'd just be like, these leads aren't very good quality. What you doing? You don't know what you're talking about. Be running around.
How are you generating leads? Your Facebook and paid marketing?
I did. I used to.
So you learned everything on the job?
Yeah, just learned it on the job. I was just trying to trade. I was trying to buy media for free, do it on a pay-per deal basis. I was trying to do innovative things with the database and trying to build that, and try and get more business and referrals. It was just basically with no marketing budget, just trying to create and stimulate interest. And we had some success with that. And so I had to really earn my place amongst those guys and girls. And I work really, and one of them, a mentor of mine and someone I've worked with very closely, Russ, he was a sales manager at the time who, gave me a hard time. He's got like really high standards, and I'm really glad he did, because that really drove me. I work now as a partner with Russ 16 years on, really, really close relationship. But at the time, that was hard. Yeah, that was really hard. So
you're competitive by nature, like you're ambitious for sure.
Yeah.
But are you competitive by nature?
No, not at all. I would say I'm not. I wouldn't. Don't usually get my back up with other people and feel like I'm in competition with anybody. I want things to be right and want things to be good, and maybe I'm a little bit competitive. Maybe
you are a soccer fan, right?
Yeah.
Liverpool, Manchester.
So for many years, Manchester City. and enjoyed very, very successful years. But more recently, Stockport County, because Mark bought Stockport County.
So that's why you change your...
yeah, you have to, really. That's the...
So, okay. I was about to say something, but probably off camera. It's all about business, huh?
yeah. That's a passion project, yeah, for sure. It's not a...
Nice. 2088 till 2015, you were into select properties.
Yes.
And you were selling properties all across?
Yeah.
Or is it Dubai?
So
Tell me more
Dubai,
about select property.
yeah, so Select Property at its height became the largest seller of UAE property across Europe. I don't know if it still holds that record, but at the time it was. And it was back when Dubai was still a dream, a vision, really, and predominantly sold a lot of property in Dubai Marina, which is a beautiful place. Subsequently, though, sold property in Egypt, Turkey, Spain, all across the world. So my role initially was about lead generation and feeding a sales team. And that expanded to building marketing teams then in the UK, but also in Dubai and China and elsewhere. And then I kind of arced into doing the sales and marketing strategy for Vita Student in sort of 2018. And then an ex-colleague of mine, again, another Trevor Moore was, the guy who set up the operational side of Vita Student. He was the architect of the service and the standards and the experience. Brilliant operator. He's the reason that Vita Student is regarded, the best service delivery in the industry for sure, because he set up that kind of framework and built a team that many of which now still are in the operational team who deliver the services every day. But a guy who worked for him, Lee, who was the previous MD, he left in 2019. And I then got the opportunity to start working on the ops side. So I took the managing director role to bring together sales, marketing, and operations in 2019. And then my first kind of welcoming to operations was COVID. So I was just trying to get my head around how operations worked. And then I was actually in China in January of 2020. And one of the partners out there said to me, it was actually Jason from U Home, said to me, "Max, I can't believe you're here. Yeah, I wouldn't have come if I were you. All my friends are leaving China now." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then every day that went on, the news started to get worse and worse. And I left Beijing on the day that Wuhan got closed down. And I came back to the UK and I was like, "Guys, this is pretty serious. This is a big deal." And we then a month later, in the February, got a call to say that the UK's very first confirmed case of COVID was one of our students in York.
Oh.
So I drove over to York, panicked, worried. Sky News outside the development, York University.
Whoa.
It was very intense. But that was a great introduction to COVID and operations and post-pandemic operations, because at the time, while we felt very unlucky that we had the first case, the exposure we got to Public Health England and our understanding of the disease was very, very deep, very, very early. So by the March, when most businesses were only just starting to close down or the pandemic was starting to reach a point in the UK, we already had screens, face masks, signage, all the things that during COVID were normal and everyone was doing. It was in every supermarket, in every sort of situation. We had all that stuff early because we had a Chinese audience who were well versed with the pandemic, and we had examples in China, and we'd had such an early experience with it, we were able to react. So getting into that operational side, that was...
Is it right to say that anything which doesn't kill you make you stronger?
100%, yeah.
And because we are still alive and talking, but those 2 years or probably those 6 months, when I remember,
it was 5 years ago. How mad is that?
Yeah. And imagine you're a new CEO, first time, right? Got the worst or the most toughest part of the company and for the industry, right? Because I remember we were 70 people that one time. We were cruising, right? We were spanning the US, raising our Series A, all that, right? And then this happened. I'm like, let's go back to our base, which is UK. Right? Didn't have any clue what's gonna happen. We like, okay, let's continue to do the right thing. Let's continue to spread the right information, holding people up, telling the right thing, what's happening, what's not happening. That's where we were one of the first one to launch. Very proud to take this credit that University Living, among not only we are the category creator, because I launched Uni Rogers back in 2011, and when I started University Living in 2015, till 2019 we were competing with the biggies of Uni Rogers and Student.com and whatnot. In 2021, that's why 2020, I realized that if we are doing the right thing, creating the right content, right, we started flood of webinars. Not sure what's going to happen, but bringing the right people together, making universities talk about. And I realized one thing, that this industry is not only inflation or a recession proof, it's also pandemic proof. I call it's a World War III proof. Because God forbid that should not happen. But we all know that international university will go belly up if international students don't come. Do you agree to this?
Yeah, 100%. I think on the first point, I think you bang on. I think when you have those hard times, it really shapes you. And I think that how you behave in those hard times really sets you up for the future. So I think when it's ever difficult, just embrace that and learn from it and do the right thing. And, for me, I started a sales and marketing career in the middle of the financial recession and then started an operational career when it was pandemic, and those things, having those experiences have really helped me. How you guys behaved during COVID and how that you've driven your business since has really been the making of what you guys have done. So you should definitely do that. On the point about UK universities, there's a huge risk for UK universities at the moment. The economics of how UK university education works is flawed and challenged, and in that domestic students generally do not make any money for the university. It's not a profitable venture. And it's not that it's a government subsidized venture. The student ends up paying for it as well. So they end up in loads of debt. But every UK university is restricted from charging domestic students any more than a capped amount. And that cap only changed last year, but by time...
Which is just 5%?
Yeah, it was a tiny amount.
Is 9,400?
Exactly, yeah. So it changed by hundreds of pounds rather than thousands, which I think the universities were expecting and potentially deserved. But prior to that, it hadn't moved for 10 years. And if you think about inflation over the last 10 years, the cost of delivering the world's highest quality education, the resources, the lecture rooms, even just the energy, the lights and the gas for the lecture halls, it put UK universities under massive strain. So what can they do? They have to recruit international students. And the international students, they're uncapped in what they can charge. Now, I don't think UK universities take advantage of international students in their charging. They simply just charge what the education probably costs to deliver. And as a result, international students are absolutely crucial to the economics of a UK university, to the extent now where I think the Russell Group consists of about 25 to 30% of all of its students are international students, and that's to stay open and to survive. So attracting international students to the UK is crucial, absolutely vital. And if they don't do it, if the UK doesn't achieve that and universities don't achieve that, then universities will go out of business. You've already seen universities very recently talking about cuts, reducing faculties, reducing headcount. And again, we've talked about it from a business point of view. You should always be looking at efficiencies. That's a good business practice anyway, to be streamlined. And it's sort of natural selection in a way. They're probably getting rid of courses that didn't have the adoption. But UK needs to be really careful, because I think it's traded on its traditional heritage and reputation for many years. But there's some really good quality study destinations now that have emerged. And if you look at the QS rankings, there's universities all over the globe that are now starting to take those top spots. The China universities, Peking University, it's gone up the rankings. It's in the Times top 25 now, I think. You've got Hong Kong universities doing extremely well. Japan's becoming a major source of education.
Students,
European nations, France, Germany, Spain, we've talked about quite a lot. We're really excited.
India is
about
coming
Spain.
of the age, with all the TNE coming in, and so many of universities coming in, opening their branch offices here. And with Mr. Modi vision of studying India as at least an Asia hub, if not international hub. So every university is increasing their soft power.
Definitely, and that's it. I think it's. You would, wouldn't you? You want to have a great education system in your home country. So every emerging economy and society is investing in that. The UK used to have two advantages. One, it had the heritage of 500-year-old institutions. Two, it was language. People went to Australia, Canada, US and UK because they spoke you had English courses and that improved English language, but you can now get an English language spoken course in Barcelona.
In Europe, yeah.
Or you can go to Hong Kong and have the whole course taught in English. So language isn't
it has to be experience, and also it has to be a outcome.
100%.
So let's talk about outcome, and you talk about lots of crucial points. 2 points here, right? How important is ranking and why? And of course, there's lobby around. Everything can be influenced, right? So firstly, if you will be choosing a destination or university for your son, and I hope, and I'm sure he will go to university, and he will break the family tradition. Second, why UK universities are still milking international students? We all know, and on the stages, all universities, all BCs, DVCs talk that, we are care about international students, all right. We care about Indian, we care about Chinese. But when it comes to standing up for international students, not every university or not every educator live by their talks.
A lot more can be done. Definitely. I mean, as someone who accommodates a lot of international students, we understand that is a particularly important role that we have of duty of care for those international students. They're studying very far from home in a place that's not familiar in many cases, in a culture that can be not familiar.
The weather is not harsh.
The weather's not great. The food's not great. It's one of those where it can be difficult on mental health, and they're there for the most positive aspirational reasons, which is to better themselves as a human and make themselves more credible to employ or grow their network, build out the friendship base. They might meet their future life partners as part of that experience. There's so many amazing reasons that they're doing that at higher education. But I think, so I don't think personally, and I'm no expert in higher education at all, definitely caveat that. What I would say is I don't think that international students are being milked by the uni. I think the unis are probably charging a reasonable to fair price for what the
but then with the outcome, if the outcome,
I agree.
I'm agree. If you get me a 50,000 pound job in my first year and you're charging me 30,000, even 40,000, I'm like all in. But
if the job isn't there at the end, then what's the point?
No one commit employment,
So I think it's twofold. So to go back to your first question, which is how much do the rankings matter? So the rankings do matter. We can't get away from the fact that the rankings do matter, because if you're going to make that investment, you're going to spend £50,000. You don't want to spend £50,000 on something ranked 80th when you can spend £50,000 on something ranked 10th, because you believe that for whatever reason, the rankings will impact your outcomes. But I think...
But ranking, again, let's say, let me talk about university living, right? I mean, we've been hiring lots of students who are studying UK or in US or Australia, right? We don't hire basis which university they have studied. And ranking is, I have not even thought about ranking.
No. So I think the bigger point for me is, I totally agree with you. It matters to students and parents at the point where they're going into the process, because they just look at the rankings as a source of comfort that the investment is going to bring the outcome. But the ranking doesn't actually affect outcomes, really. And I don't think any university really can guarantee an outcome. It depends on the individual.
Agree.
It depends on the individual. So
totally agree.
If you go and get a top quality degree from a top quality institution, it does not guarantee you a path in life. It's what you do with that education, it's what you do with that degree, and it's what you do with your time and your effort and your focus once you've accomplished that degree. You can get a lower quality degree from a lower quality institution and still be very successful. As you said, when you're interviewing hundreds of people that work for you, you're not always looking, you might see on the CV.
Not even always, never.
You're looking at the individual, like how they come across, what are they as a human, what are their views on things. And a lot of that can be shaped, that employability can be shaped by your environment. Now, typically, the top quality universities deliver top quality environments. And when I say environments, that is great study facilities, it's other like-minded colleagues, you're meeting classmates who are going to better you rather than drag you down.
Alumni network.
Exactly that. And you're going to be challenged, hopefully, by some of the best minds and lecturers and all that kind of stuff. So by picking a university that's usually ranked up at the top, your odds of being in a better environment to take advantage of these types of factors probably increase. But in a place where the ranking is lower, and by the way, I don't know the metrics on how these rankings come up. Some of it's based on research. It's not even based on teaching. Some of it's based on
infrastructure, research, ranking. Your MOU signed with international universities. There are lots of things,
A lot of things that don't have anything to do with career or outcome. So the rankings should not be the be-all and end-all for the student. What the student should be looking for, and advised by their counsellor, educational counsellor, or other trusted advice, should be about what environment you're putting me into. And if that environment, it has the right classmates, the right hygiene factors for me to cultivate a positive, successful, employable mindset, then the outcomes will come. Provided you put the hard work in, provided that you have the right attitude, then the outcomes come. I think you could get the best quality degree from Oxford University and still end up unemployed if you don't do the work.
And you're not utilizing the experience, the people around.
Exactly. So I think the UK has been impacted a bit in this last year because maybe it has got a bit complacent and its university rankings have slid. But I do think the university still offers a great environment for students to thrive. Now the other point that you mentioned before is about the milking of international students by universities. Just to finish that point, I don't think they're taking advantage of them in terms of overcharging them, because they need to charge a certain amount to make the economics of it work.
But then tell me one thing, sorry I'm interrupting here, and let me vouch for international student being one. Same education, same infrastructure, same faculty you are giving to a domestic student for under 10,000. And you're charging 3 times or 4 times an international student. How fair is that?
So this is where it comes to the next point, I think, where it's about the experience that's being delivered. So it's not about... So where the universities could do better, I think, is to understand that what they are offering, what their value proposition actually is to create an environment where success is bred. And you meet, it's a meeting of minds and it's a meeting of classmates, and people are rubbing shoulders with others that are going to be successful and creating thought-provoking, success-driving criteria for young people to go and be great. And I think the universities still just see the international student as a bit of a commodity, a bit of a balancing act in the P&L to make sure that they've got a certain quantity. And I don't, that's a sweeping statement, but I don't know how much universities would go as far to say, okay, what is the arrival experience of that student into our country, into one of our cities, from the airport to the landing in the accommodation, in between lectures, what environment are they in, and is that conducive to excellence? And we spend a lot of time thinking about that, and that's an area where I think that we are qualified, because we have 10,000 apartments across the UK currently in Vita Student, and 90% of the people who live with us are international students. We've operated for 10 years and had tens of thousands of international students go through our doors, and they're in our buildings. They spend 80% of their time with us. We house them, we give them events, we feed them. Our brand relationship with our international students is very, very close, and we understand that they're a very special individual at a very special point in their life. And there's a lot more that maybe the industry could do as a whole to come together to make those landing opportunities and the enrolment of international students to the UK, then the ongoing experience maximisation, and then the leaving experience and the connection and the kind of that post-study relationship with that student, so they become an ambassador and a cheerleader of the UK forevermore, wherever they go, could be better. And that's all I'd hope that universities spend more focus on.
I was about to ask the same thing, because you might not be an expert for higher education, but definitely you're an expert for student accommodation. Would love to hear from you, and because lots of my audience are students, parents, education partners, university reps, ICRs, right? Would love to go deeper into accommodation as per se. Then what are different type of accommodation, different type of room types, then there is organized, there's unorganized. Then there is, jargon like HMOs, BTR, there's a new bird coming in, rental bills. Right? You and I'm sure you are expert for that, so would love to hear.
Sure. So accommodation while you're studying is, for some people, just a bed. They just need to find a place to sleep while they're studying. And we don't believe that that's the case at Vita Student. We believe that the student accommodation experience can be a catalyst for a far more enriching educational experience.
Totally agree. It can make it or break it.
100%, because if you live with people that are potentially undesirable or that you don't get on with, you're not going to make friends, you're not going to meet like-minded individuals, you're not going to be successful, you could drop out of university. If you live in an environment where you can't study, or there's late night music and you can't get good quality sleep, or you can't get access to facilities to do studying, work, coursework, podcasts, you're not going to be quite as successful. So we cherish this duty of care that we have, which is housing people at a very formative moment in their life. It's the moment where many people are going from being children to being adults, and it's the shaping moment of the rest of their life. It's why the Vita Student brand message is begin big. We see ourselves as a platform for people to begin big and go for it. And when a student is choosing where to go to study, I think a lot of emphasis is placed on which cities, which countries, which universities, and which courses. And they might spend months applying, looking in detail, looking through prospectuses, reading every detail about the course or the different university or the entry requirements, whatever. When it comes to the accommodation, however, they might get Google Maps or something, look at what's close, not really understand what they're buying, and fair enough, right? If you're a student living away from home for the first time, this is a product you've never bought before. You've never lived away from home, so you're an unsophisticated consumer. But as an unsophisticated consumer of your educational course, you put a lot of research in. When it comes to the accommodation, sometimes it's overlooked. It's just treated like, oh, you've done all the hard bits, you picked the right university, and then you're just going to live in the nearest, cheapest bed.
And then we have people like me who are so smart. We don't book, we go there, we're like, we'll see.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see. And then we saw.
And then
I stayed in a hotel for 1.5 months, I saw.
Yeah.
I spent 82 a pound.
And how much it impacts. We've seen so many students, one of the leading reasons for students dropping out of university is ultimately traced back to having a poor accommodation experience. So it can make it or break it. So you cannot underscore the importance of making the correct accommodation choice, right? So that's the first point. The second point is, what options are there available? Okay, so quick.
What are the different kind of accommodation?
Yeah, so it's just quickly scanning through the market. So you will first on the list is university halls. So many universities will offer guaranteed places at university halls. University halls are a total basket case of quality. You get some that are very bad, some that are better, some that are very good. But generally speaking, they are run by and owned by the university. The universities are experts at education. They are not landlords. So they only do it as a side activity, a side hustle to their education piece. So they can provide beds near university, but they're not there to provide any more ambitious experience. They have, uni reps and freshers weeks and activity and welfare and stuff, but it's generally pretty basic, and it's old stock that isn't very thoughtfully designed. So university halls, places are limited. It can be relatively cheap because the universities are quite keen to cap the rates, but that does mean that they cap the quality because they can't invest in it. But usually that's quite close to university. You're with other students, which is a positive, probably not the highest quality. You won't be able to live in there for very long. Usually you can only live in there for a year. Second option that you have is private sector. So you can go to private landlords, whether that's an apartment or it's a HMO, a house of multiple occupations. That might be a bedroom in a house. It might have been a house that was originally designed for a 4-member family where a landlord has bought it and divided up every room into multiple bedrooms. So now it houses 7 students. And in the private market, again, it's very much just approach of it's a bed to sleep in. Now you can get really high quality beds. You might live in a swanky apartment in a brand new tower, or you might get a room that used to be a dining room of a 1950s house. But the difficulty with that is it's probably a lot of options. You can live almost anywhere in any accommodation type, but you're not always going to be with students. In HMOs, you might be in a house of students. In the flats, you might not be in a building full of students. Certainly, if you're in a HMO, you might be on a road that is a family student flat family, student flat. So you might not be in an area that is just all students. But what I would say about the overall experience there, although the quality of the real estate can be 0 or 100, or the location could be 0 or 100, is very rarely is there a positive landlord customer experience, because the landlord is just a landlord.
They're not professional.
They're not
There's
professional.
time.
Yeah. Some of them who have a large portfolio of student properties might be more professional than others, but
but still not competing with the PBSAs.
Yeah. They're just delivering an accommodation solution. They're not looking at professionalised
on
services.
campus, then private HMOs,
and then you have PBSA, Purpose-Built Student Accommodation. So there's a segment in the UK of accommodation for students that's purpose-built for students, and that is accredited, it's regulated, it's got recognisable brands. So the largest brands in the UK are Unite and IQ. Between them, they've got hundreds of thousands of beds. The advantage with PBSA is you are living in an accommodation product that is designed for students to live in. You're living with other students, and the landlord who looks after you is generally focused on that student experience and delivering for students in a student-centric way. So if you want an accommodation that's designed for living in while you're at university, I would always recommend PBSA. I'm biased because Vita is
likewise.
PBSA.
Now I'm becoming more neutral because we do now unorganized and HMOs also.
Yeah.
And it was strange when you were talking off campus about HMOs and all the rules coming. I'm like, from last 15 years, I'm all about PBSA. Last 2 years, I'm started, probably getting more believer of HMOs. And things are looking very interesting, right? Yeah. Over to you.
Yeah. So there's a piece of legislation coming through the UK at the moment. It was originally proposed by the Conservative previous government, been picked up by the Labour government and taken over the line. It's been read in the Commons. It's been read in the Lords. So it's happening, and it's going to change the way rental property and rent and the rights of renters work in the UK. And it has certain impacts on the type of accommodation that will be available. And who knows, they're still drafting some of the legislation. We're yet to see how that legislation will impact decision-making of landlords, of PBSA operators, of various people in the industry. But there's a line of thinking that suggests that this new Renters' Rights Act will put off private landlords from renting to students, because there's specific provisions in it that suggest that students could give notice to leave within 2 months. They're not allowed to book their accommodation for the following September until a certain point in the year. They have to give, they're mandated on what the deposits can look like, various things that could be complicated for HMO landlords who historically had none of these problems, and just probably, a lot of them were just taking advantage of students and it's easy business, but it's going to be less easy for them. So a lot of them might just say, if they're a passive landlord, this is too much hassle, sell their property. That releases property back into the UK property sector for families, for first-time buyers, to help with the housing crisis that the UK has. But then it limits the options for students. And if you look at the market at the moment where you can live as a student, generally it's a third into university halls, a third into HMOs, a third into PBSA. If a third of the stock goes, then that could put a lot of pressure on the PBSA beds that exist and the halls that exist, which then stimulates a requirement for more development of PBSA to try and backfill. And it's very easy for the government in the UK to solve the housing crisis. They can either build more homes, or they can repurpose homes that exist back into families and put students into PBSA, and then make the challenge on the student industry to build more beds for students. And that's how this new act could shape out.
If you become a Prime Minister of UK, and you know about international education, you know about student accommodation, right? We all believe that we have the solution. Why government is not thinking this way? They are best of the brains at House of Commons, House of Lords, right? What is missing? Is it the intent? Is it the lobbying? Is it what is missing? Because solution is there.
Yeah, I think there's two things, isn't there? I think there's a lack of understanding, which takes time to understand, and then there's agendas. So there are agendas at play within the government and within different factions within the government that all disagree with each other or agree on certain things, that all want certain outcomes. And their beliefs and their value structures drive their decisions. So, a lot of the renters, the new legislation that's coming through is driven by a want to make conditions fairer for renters, which I think everybody totally believes in.
But that is not because it works.
The detail then how that's delivered actually in some cases will inhibit renters, in some cases will benefit.
But how I see it, again, it's gonna milk international students. Because once you have less cheaper unbudgeted options, they are forced to stay in PBSA. Though PBSA is amazing. I mean, I'm a product of PBSA, right? But then the students don't have options.
And I think, what I would say is, although the student doesn't always have the lower priced option, so let's look at it. The reason why HMO is favoured, why you like it, and why it has a good place in the UK market, and let's not forget, I'm predicting here like some crystal ball that HMO landlords will sell.
Right.
They might not. And of the 600,000 beds of HMOs, approximately, maybe only 100,000 sell, or 200,000 sell, or 50,000 sell, who knows? But there'll always be that choice, I think, in the market. It'll always exist as a first point. But the reason why people like it, generally, is because it's cheap.
Yeah.
Why is it cheap? Because it's not actually very good accommodation. That's no disrespect to any HMO landlord.
But there's a requirement everyone. Like, let's say someone, want to put more money into a better rank university, and they want to trade off with probably cheaper accommodation.
Yeah. It's difficult, isn't it? I suppose that's the challenge. I suppose if it's a higher ranking university, they can afford to charge, and they can afford, and some of the international students can maybe afford to study.
But there are many who balance out. I mean, at least in US, the trend I've seen, lots of students have spent fortune to get through that Ivy League and top 100 and whatnot, and eventually for accommodation, like, it's another roof. Though we have a vested interest, and we actually believe that it's not only the classes where you make friends.
It's more in your accommodation.
That is where you get your co-founder, soulmates, even that friend in China or a friend in India, which probably you would be doing a startup.
Students don't make friends with the classmates in the lecture. They make friends with the people they live with. And that's why picking the right environment where you live is the most important thing. And I think...
But then that you and me know, right? But for any logical person, a parent or a student, they're like, or any stakeholder who've been, influencing students and parents, they're like, read in the best of universities, you will get a job, and accommodation can be taken. You're not going, I've read this, I've heard this. You're not going there to have fun. You're going to study. Just stay in a bed where you can take a shower, you sleep, and you go to classes and make fortune.
And I think that's the thing. Then the parent hasn't fully thought of the fact that even if their son or daughter is very studious, if you put them in a cheaper block, well,
who they are staying with?
What's the behaviour of everyone around? What time are they partying until? How secure is that building? What experience is there?
How conducive with that place?
Exactly. So I think for me, obviously, I'm very pro PBSA, and I don't think the reduction potentially of HMOs is a negative to students, because I know there's potentially less choice, but it could be less choice and more weighted towards better quality products. And now the thing that's not working at the minute is not enough international students are getting the outcomes that they deserve. They're not getting the jobs. But is that because they're choosing cheap accommodation?
Maybe not.
So if that bit is diminished and they're getting better quality education, better quality accommodation, and get better quality experience and better quality outcomes, then the student wins. In the short term, they think that they may be paying slightly more, but in the long term, if they build a career and they meet the classmates and they meet the co-founder in the right place, then they're actually winning.
In fact, if I talk about this, this is when I used to sell and I still used to sell, right? I tell them, and I believe it's logical, right? You're spending $50,000 or a pound or $30,000 pound for a best of universities. If you see the delta between HMO, private apartments, university halls, and PBSA, that delta is just 2,000-3,000 pounds.
100%. Exactly.
And most of PBSA are in city center, and that's where most of the part-time jobs, that's where the action is happening. If you see, you get more opportunities than staying in outskirts and staying with only Indians or only Chinese.
Traveling all the way in.
Traveling all the way, missing classes because either you're saving money on convents or you're like, I'll go and I have all the classes one day and then I'll rest at home. doesn't work out.
It doesn't.
Right?
It's a false economy.
In fact, I was reading somewhere, and I'll probably share that video. It's not about what you do. It's about with whom you do, and on what you do.
Yeah, exactly. It's that environmental impact that we talked about before. So who you surround yourself with.
I was about to give you an example. So there was a case study happened. Wherein there was a very famous guitarist. Who's like one of the best. In Wembley Stadium, he was playing, and everyone was spending $100 a seat. Same guitarist at one of the tube station played for 45 minutes, and he just collected 30 pounds. Same. So since then, I'm like, it's not about what you're working on, how much time you're putting in. It's about for whom you're working, on what you're working, and where you're working.
Yeah, you've got to put yourself in the right situation. And I think that's the thing, back to your original point about outcomes and who you hire. You're not hiring someone because of the quality of their degree in the institution. You're hiring the right type of individual and the right skill and the right kind of behaviours and attitude and values. So I think that comes from environmental factors. And as you bang on, Saurabh, the difference between the worst quality in the market and the very best quality in the market, £2,000 or £3,000 for 12 months of your life.
If you're in Vita, even though £3,000, he will be paying me more. They have breakfast. That is like £10, at least minimum £10 a day. 50 weeks is £500. And similarly, you arrange lots of events and employability, jobs, fair.
And that's it. Because we're passionate about student experience, we're looking at all the ways that we can elevate that educational experience. So one you mentioned there is breakfast. So every day there's sustenance, pastries, yogurts, fruits, hot options, cold options, variety. So you can just get part of your meals sorted for the day so you can focus on study. You can wake up just before the lecture, heading out the door, get some food, get to your lecture, be well, nutrition, ready for the thing.
Why others are not doing it? Is it because you understand China and India market and
it's difficult.
Parents wants their kid to eat a breakfast?
Yeah, so we talked before about why do we travel to where we go and spend time in the markets, because you want to understand the audience and speak to people and understand what they value, and then you with that enriched understanding you can develop your product, and that's what we did.
Why others are not doing it? It's so no-brainer.
It's hard to do. It's hard to do, and it's hard to sell. Because I think, at the moment, students aren't always looking and weighing up their accommodation choices properly because they don't understand it and they're not being educated to. And lots of landlords don't really want to give that education because it takes extra time. So they're just selling on a price point. And what's the best way to make the price point cheaper is to take services out. The way we look at it is, what can we add to our proposition that makes it better for the customer? And what it costs is what it costs. I'm not saying that we're for everybody, but if we're only a few £1,000s more than someone else, but you get breakfast with us, we have an events program. Every single day in every single resident, there's an event. And that could be fitness orientated. So PTs coming and activating sessions doing yoga or boxing or giving you a new physical experience that you may not have tried before. You might inspire a love for the gym and fitness from that. We do skills building. So we might teach you Spanish. We might do crafts that.
So these are just heck of it or a real
real events. So if you follow,
lots of other brands are doing events, right?
That's
but
the difference,
those events are good to attend.
We
have their another tick, or I would say item on their, when people come for reviewing, they're like, oh, we are doing all this, but then it only happens in the first 2-3 months, and then
for
not in the first 2-3 months.
No, every single night, all the way through the year, every single day, there's events at Vita, and we've got a centrally employed team that coordinate the most fabulous events program. As I mentioned, it could be craft workshops, it could be skills. We took all of our students to Bicester Village for a shopping experience. We do lots of retail and partner experiences. We had Represent do a store closing just for Vita students specifically to come and buy things, and no one else from the public was allowed in the store. Well, Vita students had the first unveiling of new products. We have those things every week. If you follow Vita Student Instagram, you'll see every day on the stories and all the content of all the things that we're doing. So we've got an enriching events program that happens every single day. We have other things like to make an international student's life easy, like you get a free digital GP subscription as part of living at Vita Student. You get housekeeping. So your apartment is cleaned for you by housekeepers, rather than you spend the time going to the shop, buying all of the chemicals, buying all the cleaning materials, lugging it all the way back to your apartment, having to clean regularly. We take that away.
But then don't you think when you are going abroad and staying away from family, these are few important life skills they need to develop?
So yes, and the beauty is our housekeeping team form the most beautiful relationships with the students. They become their away from home mums in many cases, and they teach them how to clean. Just sending your child off and saying, "Oh, clean for yourself." They don't. Sometimes you get people putting washing up liquid in the washing machine and get all these things wrong that students do when they're learning for the first time. Our housekeeping team say, this chemical does this does this, why don't you do that? They give tips, tricks, hints. But they're also a really useful welfare check for us, because they have these really meaningful engagements with the students. They get to know who they are, from what countries they're from, what's important to them. And that helps us as a business understand those customers more. So there's layers and layers and layers. And some in the events program, I didn't talk about the inspiration skills. So we bring industry leaders to the buildings to inspire and employ and come up with business ideas. And we bring startups, and we do loads of things to enrich that experience. So there's so many layers to us. We're not just a bed. We're not just a place that you sleep in when you go to university. It's about having an environment where you've got like-minded individuals, form friendships for life, be in an environment of success where you can begin big. Vita is where ambition lives. And that's the thing that we really get across. And if students really value their education, you've got to choose accommodation that reflects that and understand the impact that accommodation can have on your overall educational outcomes.
You mentioned ambition, right? And I know you're ambitious, and that's a common which we share, right? But before that, there's a school of line or a school of thought. There are two way of thinking. One, if all the rich brat, snobbish people staying, they will party hard. And the other school of line is that, probably which you mentioned, that, if you stay with the like-minded people who can afford a certain kind of lifestyle. I've seen lots of good examples, but I've also seen lots of bad examples wherein all the rich brats, people who can afford, and money is not a criteria. What's your take on both school of thoughts?
They're definitely valid. I think that, picking the environment that you want to be a part of, you need to consider all things that environment might attract. If you talk about the HMO or the apartment block again, you get a lot of people who choose the HMO or the apartment block for greater levels of independence. And when they want greater levels of independence, what they mean often is they don't want someone telling them off if they're having a party or telling them off if they're smoking in the rooms. And again, just because it's cheaper, doesn't mean you're getting a less affluent student staying there who's wanting to party. There's so many different dynamics to it. I think what we try and do to even it out is we try to build a very healthy, a very positive community where the staff, the 24 hours on site, they're always there. You get to know them. You're part of your relationship. They marshal and support and guide that community to be a positive one and contribute to it in a way which means that there isn't like this rich brat group that influences everyone, or there isn't like a loud group, or there isn't we're a multicultural great group of students who we try and create a cohesive, even-handed environment for all of those customers. But yeah, look, I think if our accommodation cost £10,000 more than the next one, or £20,000 more than the next one, maybe you're appealing to a different class of person. £2,000 or £3,000 more expensive. So many people, if you can afford a 30 or 40 or £50,000 degree, I think everybody can afford Vita in that bracket. But it's what you want from your accommodation. And we aren't for everybody. There will be some people who say, look, I'd rather pay a little bit less, not have the events, not have the breakfast, not have the GP service, not have all of the housekeeping, not have all of those additional benefits. But you just need to make sure you're still picking an environment that is the type of environment that's going to be conducive to what you're trying to achieve. Fair bit.
Ambition. What is Vita ambition? What is your end goal? What is Vita journey for next 10 years? You've seen last 10 years, right? From last 10 years, growing from 0 to 10,000 beds. One of the world top premium accommodation partners, if I can may say it. And it's a fact, right? We work with all of your peer groups and every brand have their own, they have their own positioning. Someone is price conscious, someone is volume, someone is premium, someone is probably regional, right? What next for Vita, and what we can expect from Vita for India market and for international students, for marketplace. Like I'm giving you a loaded question, so you take your time and probably I sip some water. But what next for Vita? What is your end goal? And what is in between?
So we've had a really successful last 10 years, been incredible growth and opportunity, and great to learn from our students and built a brilliant team. Vita Student isn't for every single student. We recognise that. We're never going to be 70,000, 80,000 beds like an IQ or a Unite. I just don't simply think there is.
Why so?
Because
then people say that when you have 70,000, you have economic scale. You can leverage lots of things. You can rotate cash flow better. You can hedge lots of markets.
You can, and there's definite growth, and I'll come on to the growth, but I just don't think we'll ever be 70,000 beds. I think for Vita Student, we're very focused on the Russell Group universities, and we've got more beds that we could deliver into all the Russell Group universities. But at maximum, we're probably going to be 25,000 beds in the UK.
And you own your properties?
We own some of them, and we manage some of them for other people.
Tell me more about Vita as a model. If you don't mind.
Fine. So basically, we're a fully integrated developer and operator. So what that means is we can take a patch of land, buy it, put it through planning, design it, architecturally and interior design, build it, then fill it and run it. So we can take a patch of land to a stabilised, branded accommodation in the full cycle. And that's quite rare. There's not lots of people who are end-to-end vertically integrated in that way. And what we will aim to do is to hold those properties and grow the properties under management. But from time to time, we will sell those properties to some of the world's leading institutions. These are major insurance companies and banks and investment companies, pension funds, exactly. So some of the institutions that I work with on a regular basis are Morgan Stanley, Deutsche Wealth Services, AXA Investment Managers, Savills Investment Management. There's a whole multitude of different owners that we manage properties for, and we built the properties and we sold them to them, and then we continue to run them. And sometimes we don't sell them, sometimes we continue to hold them. And ultimately, the longer you hold them, the better it is for you commercially. But from time to time, we'll sell some. And the money that gets thrown off selling them allows us to go and buy more and do the process again. So we have 10,000 beds under management.
But when you decide to sell, because, once you have acquired a property, you're developed, 2-3 years you're developed, 2-3 years, 4 years you have established. You know that market, you know that asset really well.
Yeah.
And also as a businessman, you can attach to the property.
Yeah.
Right? And especially that property is fully occupied. You're like, that's your cash cow. But that's where you get the maximum value. So what triggers the sell and what triggers the buy?
So triggering the sell is probably when we see opportunity to buy new sites. So if we need the tens of millions required to buy new sites and develop out new opportunities, we need the cash flow of money coming in from the receipts of selling properties from time to time. So it's opportunity driven. It's also opportunity driven in the sense that if the market conditions are good to sell a property, then we may consider doing that.
You sell, but you continue to operate.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more back end.
Exactly.
In front end, it's for students,
from a customer's perspective, for a partner perspective, we are Vita, the owner behind the building, whether that's us or Maple Tree. The customer and the partner shouldn't really know any difference.
Was there any case wherein a partner or a buyer said that you sell it and we'll manage it? Did you let go any such opportunity?
No. Not yet. I think I really truly hope that the owners that we've sold to, that we manage for, we do a great job for them and they continue to have us managing the properties, but they may not at some point. But that's our job to kind of do well for them and prove that we're...
In the last 10 years, there's no such case. There's no churn. Wow. That's really commendable.
Yeah. So, and as we're getting bigger, that's getting hard. That's becoming a harder record to maintain.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I think so. Looking ahead, I think Vita will expand. We've basically got 4 Vita students opening next year, and then many years after that, we've just announced 1,000 units in Canary Wharf, London, £200 million scheme. So we've got lots of pipeline in Vita Student, but I don't think there's an aspiration or a hunger for us to make it, 70,000 beds. I don't think that there's market opportunity for that either in the UK. So what else are we doing? Well, there's a few strings to our kind of future gazing. One is that we're developing other brands. So in the same way that I've passionately talked about the fact we understand students, we also believe that a student isn't just one type of user case. There's so many different students with so many different ones. So we're developing other brands within the student spectrum. So Vita Student is for a particular type of student that wants that exclusive accommodation experience that's additive to their overall university experience. Laddered into that proposition are things like studio apartments. But what we recognise is there are many students who still want a premium experience, but they want more sharing accommodation. And they don't want exclusive amenities that only they can use, but they want inclusive amenities where they can be part of the local neighbourhood, an environment and have more life in the building. So we've created a new brand called House of Social, which launches its first building in September in Manchester, 576 apartments. That is
like a BTR?
No, it's dedicated PBSA, so it's Purpose-Built Student Accommodation. It's a series of houses, so 6 beds, 5 beds, and smaller. And what we've tried to create is the vertical HMO. So what you used to have was HMOs along the street and a pub at the end. Right. What we've done is create a tower where we've got all those houses in the building, and at the bottom we've created a food hall.
Commercial, that's a mixed use of what's next for PBSA or housing.
Exactly. So we manage the food hall. We create a really friendly, really entertaining, really hospitable environment that doesn't just welcome the House of Social students, it welcomes other students from around Manchester. We want that to become the student hub. It just so happens that we have student rooms above it. And we believe that slightly more affordable price point with less services, but still a premium quality accommodation with a different amenity offering will cater to another chunk of the student audience. Now that product has the capacity to be much bigger than Vita Student in terms of volume of rooms. We've already got a pipeline of 3 more schemes that will be delivered over the next few years, but we're looking for new sites now to grow that pipeline out, and that could be quite an expansive brand for us. Outside of student, we're building residential brands. We've got a brand in BTR, built to rent, called U House, which is a premium BTR. U House. Okay. Essentially 1,200 beds, 600 apartments in Manchester city centre, premium build to rent.
You guys are Manchester based. That's
that's our hometown. So that's where we experiment and play with all of our brands. That's where everything exists. And then when they're successful, we roll them out into other cities. And we've also got a co-living brand called Union. And that's an apartment sharing model for professional lets, residential.
Union.
That's
also in Manchester.
Also in Manchester. So all of those brands have capacity and capability to grow. I think that the scale opportunities are with House of Social and with Union. The more premium opportunities are U House and Vita, where the scale is less, but it could work in certain cities. So we've got those aspirations internationally. We have a lot of, we already have 2 established Vita students in Barcelona. We've got 2 more developments coming through in Madrid in the next couple of years. For the first time ever, we're considering whether we do third-party management for other people, both in Spain and in the UK. So that could expand the brands very, very quickly if that is a commercial model that works for all parties.
But then it still won't go to 70,000. Not like HFS or...
No, because I think that there's a limit to how much premium stock each city can take, and it would have to be products that we were comfortable managing. So we'd be quite selective. We wouldn't just take on any building. It would have to meet our strict criteria for design, location, and quality.
No plans of exploring India as a market, as a destination market?
So interestingly, the next market after Spain, and the reason we chose Spain was because Europe was successful, as I said to you before. We had the choice. Was it France? Was it Germany? Was it Spain? We picked Spain because we believe Spain had more opportunity to grow in the long term because there was the language piece. So speaking Spanish means it appeals a lot to South America in terms of a destination of choice for study, but also because of the quality of the business schools in Spain. So we chose Spain. After Spain, many of our brands, particularly Vita Student, are very portable to markets like the US. Markets like Australia, markets like Canada. We've just not had the bandwidth, the time, the capital to get into those markets. But it might be that one day you see us in those places, and whether it's us directly or whether it's as a franchise with a partner in those locations, I think they would be the first countries to get to. After that, absolutely, we've looked at emerging opportunities as education starts to flourish, like India, like China. But I think that would be many, many years down the road.
Amazing. Any question you want to ask? I know it's been a detailed discussion, but you don't get Max to India as often. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and always inspiring and learning to discuss with you. Any question you have for me?
Yeah, I'm really interested because, I mean, you are a true expert of the market. You've been an international student that studied in the UK. You understood the problem. You've then gone and built a business to answer that problem in sourcing accommodation. You've got a huge team of graduates who have come from UK education and elsewhere, so you understand them as people. You're creating opportunity for them. What's your advice to international students who are looking for accommodation, whether it's using your platform or others? Yeah. What do you think are the 2 or 3 key things that you could possibly advise them on? Because you're probably one of the most well-placed people to advise an educational counsellor, a parent, a student on how to make the correct decision for their son or daughter.
This answer I've been answering even if you wake me up at 2, right? And it's going to be a bit repeated, but it's important. 3 advice which I would like to give to any international student going to UK or any country. Start early, look beyond university halls, and also explore your options. Book through University Living or book through any platform, that doesn't matter. What matters is book the right product, book with people which you believe that they will be there, because booking accommodation easy, but staying and booking with someone who been with for you for end to end, because it's not one night or a week vacation you're going. You're booking for 1 year.
Yeah.
And booking through your platform and booking for a brand which resonates with you. As we mentioned, it can make you to break it, right?
Yeah.
So these are 3 advices. And to top it up, I always say the same thing, that it's stupid, pardon my language, stupid that you book your air tickets 6 months, 9 months earlier to save that 50 pounds, 100 pounds, but you keep waiting for your accommodation to book for your visa.
Yeah.
And especially Indian student going to UK or any international going to UK, the visa success rate is above 90% or 94 to 98%.
Yeah.
Why are you not booking? Why are you waiting for the last minute? I don't know.
And many respectable accommodation providers and platforms have policies that say if they don't get the visa, they can
no
cancel
pay, no
anyway.
stay. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I have vested interest, because I am biased for student housing, that's how I make my living, As it is important for you to decide on your country or university, it is equally important to book your accommodation early, and also, book with a platform or a player which you believe they are ethical, and also, even if you want to book directly, it doesn't make sense, because as a platform, and that's where you've been supporting us as well, wherein, the way we and our brands are working, we are here to create value. We are not inflating prices wherein you are paying extra. If you book through a platform or you book through us, not only we hand holding your journey, but also probably giving some cashback or some cool vouchers or some welcome
value
kits.
adds, yeah.
So, but whether you want to book through us but start early, look beyond university halls and do book your accommodation. Don't wait for visas.
Great, perfect advice.
Yeah. Again, it's about you. Any patterns and trends you have been seeing in UK? Any ranking? Any city? Manchester's your back. It's your base. Any pattern you want to share with the audience?
I think that something that I'm certainly seeing, and I think that the audience will know, I guess, because they're involved. They are either the consumer or they're involved in placing students into universities. Will know that it's not just about the UK, the US, Canada, Australia anymore. I think the universe of options is grown quite significantly. I think most students now are choosing between MIT, Manchester, Melbourne, Munich, all on the same scorecard. I think they're looking across a global landscape of products. So I think before, a student might have quite early decided that they're going to go to a country and then looked at a few universities within that country. And many of the students that we speak to are waiting for offers now across a multitude of different geographies. So it's a truly globalized
options, and
which is a beautiful thing. To
say
that you've got an international customer base that has total global choice is quite phenomenal. And that's a real, that means the next generation is going to be quite an exciting group of individuals, because no matter which city you go to in the world, you'll have all these incredible international citizens, all from other areas around the world, all studying and homogenizing and learning together. But it does make it tricky, I think, when you, like you say, you're trying to get people to consider and digest the information. And I think that is where platforms really do come into their own, because we like to think we're the best product in the UK market. I know nothing about Germany or Australia or Canada as accommodation markets, whereas you guys do. And if there is an international student who's truly looking at a global suite of options, using a platform that has that global suite of options is really helpful, because I think you can help them cut through to get the right advice.
Thank you for watching for us. Why university living, and why, if you want to give advice, even on the camera, right? How university living can be better. What is working for us as per you, and what we should work even better and harder to become one of the best.
I think you guys are brilliant at what you do. I think, I've always said, I think you've got like a really good understanding of the customer and how to serve that customer. And that makes you very good at educating the customer on different products. I think to the point I just made about the globalization and the suite of options, one challenge for university living is how you have that level of expertise as the volume of accommodation options grows.
Right.
And that's quite tricky. And we talked a lot about Vita Student. We're not just a bed, we're quite a complex proposition. It's not just about a postcode and a location and a picture. There's so much more about our proposition. So for your team and your experts to be fully educated to all of that depth of proposition is difficult, particularly as we expand and as you expand your wider set of products. So I think there might be a point for you guys where you say, okay, we're going to go for university living recommended specific. We're going to limit our supply now to just the ones that we can guarantee and we've stayed in and we know. And there's other options as well if you want to look at those, but let's not even talk about those until we've gone through. If you're staying in the UK, there's 3 that you should be looking at in the city or whatever. It's just weighing up that choice versus expertise. I think that's a challenge.
That's a great suggestion. In fact, taking cue from you, and also that's why Unionist, we're not only partner for University Living, we're also partner for Unionist, right? And then also the way we bought Student Tenant, for the same reason that someone who's selling PBSA, and believe in PBSA should talk about PBSA. But there are students who can't afford PBSA. There are students who need flexibility. So like for you, Union, House of Social, and what was
U-House.
U-House.
Yeah.
That's a tricky name. No, I love you, Jason. But so same thought, that university living, Unionist Student Tenant, wherein if a student is, let's say, in 4th year and they want to stay with their partners or a group of friends, and they have a budget which is probably not up to PBSA, then they can book HMOs. But you have a valid point. In fact, to be honest, there's a point now. We have gone to Europe, but we are not going to Scandinavia or Nordics because there's no point diluting.
Not dilute quality. And the other thing is with that qualification, and it happens quite often. I think it happens with consultants. It happens with students. Think it's the right question to ask. Parents think it's the right question to ask. I think consultants talk about it. But if you've got a huge volume of options, if the first question is what's your budget, the route that sends you on in terms of the options is just a wild journey. Whereas if the question at the start was actually,
what are you looking for?
What are you trying to achieve from your accommodation? What do you mean? Well, do you want just a bed, or are you looking for an experience? What kind of course are you doing, and what kind of environment do you need to be in? That would shape the choice and the selection and the qualification for both the student's benefit and the consultant's benefit, probably in a more holistic way. But it's hard because I think everyone goes straight to budget. I think sometimes you say
that's so nice. In fact, after this podcast, I'll take 5 minutes and probably you address my team. Because I will say the same thing, but probably but if you say the same, and so thought provoking. That what's your budget? I mean,
what do you expect to get? And I think the thing is, if you're a consumer, so I've never bought a jacuzzi. I've no idea about the different types of jacuzzi.
Yeah.
If I
don't
go
know
in
the
and-
budget. Yeah.
Yeah, and the advisor says to me, well, what's your budget? I would say,
cheapest. Or I don't know.
Yeah, and it puts the pressure on the parent and the student to kind of try and think. And they might get advised incorrectly. They might end up in something that they're not happy with, or they might overspend on something that they don't need. The budget isn't, unless there's a specific amount left in their bank account, and that is all that they can possibly, and they've decided that that is the specific amount, then budget doesn't really exist. We get to budget. What are you looking for? And then I can inform you as an expert on what there is available for different price points.
I mean, this is my takeaway from this podcast. Coming back, and we'll close it here, rapid fire. One city where you would love to launch a Vita student property next.
Oh, great question. Great question. I'm very excited about launching in Madrid, which is next year. That would be really exciting because Barcelona has been incredible. We're across most of the UK cities. I'd actually have to say something like Amsterdam. It's a strange one to say, but we've got a lot of, there's a brand called the Student Hotel, or now it's changed to the Social Hub, I think it's called.
Yeah.
They're a really cool brand, and we always associate them with like cool and experience.
So guys, Vita is acquiring student hotel.
But they're a cool brand, and I think we've always looked up to them and thought, oh, you guys know what you're doing, and it's a pretty cool, edgy thing. So I think they started out in Amsterdam.
The biggest myth about student accommodation.
Biggest myth. I think it's what you said. I think the difference in price, the delta between the worst and the best is so small, but what you can gain is so valuable. You should really investigate the difference between the best and the rest.
Yeah. Just to help my friend, so the price point. People feel that student accommodation is expensive.
Fine.
What's the one thing student always forget when moving in?
They forget, well, depends again what they're moving into, but it's I think they usually forget their pots and pans.
What if a PBSA operator had to live in a student room for a month? What's one rule you would break first?
Yeah, that's really good.
I mean, I'm liking asking this.
Yeah, that's a really good thing. Like my music, so I don't know if it'd be a noise complaint.
You don't smoke?
No.
Okay.
No.
That's very easy. I mean, I do, but I'm never, if I stayed in Vita or any property, I don't smoke. The best advice you would give to a student moving abroad?
I think do your research, as we've talked about.
One mistake students should avoid when booking accommodation?
Don't just be drawn on price or offer.
I mean, just don't choose by price. What's the legacy you want to leave in the student accommodation space?
We just want to improve the standards. I think that's the simple goal since the start. I think we want to set an example that just improves the standards for students.
The way you guys going, it's about select property, Union, House of Social, Vita, U House. That will be tricky one. I will take time. See, it's not coming natural. Interesting. Great, Max. That's a wrap. But Max, any last thing you want to talk to audience? Anything you want to say?
Honestly,
good, bad, ugly.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. It's great to chat to you and catch up again. I think it's a great thing that you're doing. I think giving some very transparent platforms to speak directly to consumers, to speak directly to people in the industry is a really exciting thing. So yeah, long may it continue. Well done.
Thank you.